Apparently, no one noticed this about K-pop Demon Hunters. The movie is amazing, but the directors just sat down for an interview and revealed a bunch of tiny animation details, and it's absolutely genius. Now, I'm sure they didn't mean to do this, but their answer to one simple question actually sent me down a rabbit hole that revealed one of the coolest animation trends that no one's talking about. Welcome to Animation Hustle, the place where we dive into the funny and untold stories behind your favorite animated movies and TV shows. So it's no secret that K-pop Demon Hunters is the movie of the summer. It's been dominating on Netflix, and when you think about it, it's actually super obvious why. It's packed with action, comedy, music, fashion, memorable characters, catchy songs, and of course, a great story. It was directed by a powerhouse duo, Maggie Kang, who worked on Lego Ninjago movie, and Chris Applehouse, the director of Wish Dragon. As you can see, they both have super impressive resumes, and they teamed up with the animators behind SpiderVerse to create an absolute banger. Now, it is super clear that the entire animation team behind the movie poured a lot of passion into crafting this, so I had to dive into some of the behind the scenes, and some of the little details I'd uncovered are way too cool to not share. So like I said, this film has a little bit of everything. On top of the story, action, and comedy, they also had to write really great songs. The directors had to balance all those elements perfectly, but they also had to blend that with Korean culture. Most fans will notice the K-pop influence in the dancing.
K-pop photography, costume design, lighting is so advanced, it's so world-class. Combining that with skilled action animators that we had at ImageWorks who are just incredible. Great action, great lighting, cool looking characters, like they just all kind of sit together.
Of course, the Korean mythology and the character designs.
We were inspired by a lot of just folk art, and there's actually not a lot to reference from, so we're finding whatever we could. Design elements from temples or like a rooftop or like just a flower emblem thing.
And the anime and K-drama references too.
We took so much inspiration from K-dramas, and those actresses, they go from like pretty comic to like the most sophisticated, subtle acting. So we kind of were like, we're gonna use chibi stuff for emotions that are maybe lighter weight, maybe more superficial. And then when it came to like
earnest,
the heavy stuff or the real stuff, we tried to ground it a little bit more. Yeah.
You guys also nailed the K-drama cinematography and editing.
Yeah.
Like that alley scene, I was just like, oh my god. Like, oh my god, I feel like I'm watching other Netflix stuff right now.
It was really hard too. We're like, whoa, these guys are really good at camera to get this stuff to work. Yeah.
And
So every single tiny detail was thought out and planned, but it goes even deeper than most audiences even realize. Next time you watch the movie, pay close attention to the characters' faces because they were animated in a very unexpected way.
And then with the girls, we wanted to really represent an Asian face, Korean face, and wanted each of them to be very distinct. And even with the way that we animated them, their eye shapes, their mouth shapes, even when they speak, even though they're speaking English, we try to create Korean mouth shapes. So one thing that we did was kind of rounding these corners on the mouth corners, and that really made them feel like they were speaking Korean, even though they're English speaking. Yeah.
Now, this level of detail is almost invisible to most audiences, but subconsciously, for people who are part of the culture, it adds a little extra layer of authenticity. And this isn't just a one-time thing. This is part of a bigger trend in animation where creators are going beyond the surface level representation to really get those details right. Like take Encanto, for example. To make the characters feel Colombian, the animator studied local dance, gestures, and yes, even mouth movements, just like in K-pop Demon Hunters.
Main focus for us was to be really understand like what should we be animating that would transport you into that part of the world. So there were like gestures that people do in Colombia that are very specific. We learned that when people in Colombia, when they point at something, they sometimes point with their lip like this. So when you see Mirabel doing that kind of gesture, it is very much a Colombian thing that they do over there, and we incorporated that into the film. And yeah, I mean, our main job as animators is really to act to our characters, but also, since the movie takes place in Colombia, we wanted to make sure it was very specific and that we were doing justice to our characters and make sure they felt like they belong in that part of the world. So hopefully, when you watch the movie, you get transported to Colombia.
And it turns out in SpiderVerse, one whole sequence had to be redone because it just wasn't feeling right.
Element of people kind of feeling comfortable enough to bring their personal experience and what they knew about it, understanding that no one person can speak for an entire culture.
Of course.
But probably the most extreme case of that and how it transformed the film was actually when he went to Mumbai because we had like an entire version of that scene really built out that we felt relatively good about. And then we have a lot of, our animation team is very diverse. It's people from all ethnicities, you know, from all over the world. And a group of our Indian and Indian American animators, particularly in Canada as well as India, kind of got together and wrote us an email. They were like, look, this doesn't represent a realistic version of our culture. And what we did was we quickly, first we set up a Zoom call, myself and Phil and Chris and the other directors, and they kind of laid out all the problems they had with it. And even though we were pretty far along in production, we then went ahead and assembled a writer's room of all Indian and Indian American writers. It was an all-day conversation about culture. Like, they watch it and they give us notes and they talk about things from their childhood and all that stuff. Comedian Hassan Minaj was in the room, and he was the one who talked about his hair and like using coconut oil for hair. And I was like, yep, we're putting that in. Like, it was just a lot of people just flipping things at us, and we were just like writing, and then, you know, we presented a new version of it.
Pixar Soul is another example. In the barbershop scene in that movie, the animators went out of their way to add specific cultural details to the scene. Everything about the way the characters move and talk make you feel like you're actually in a black barbershop, and I can say that because I am black. But one of the most important elements is, of course, the hair. I read that Pixar animators actually went out of their way to add complex yet authentic hairstyles to all the characters, even the ones in the background. They didn't have to do it, but it really made the scene feel better. So in Moana, they had an entire cultural consulting team that would help them shape the movie. The directors were originally inspired by Polynesian myths, which is great, but they didn't have the experience and expertise to really tell the story authentically. And one of the best examples of that is with the character Maui.
That was the meeting where we showed them our early drawings of Maui and all that, and they said, no, Maui's got to have long hair. He can't be bald. And so we said, okay, we're going to change it, and that was typical of things that, you know, where we talked to our advisors from the South Pacific, really our collaborators, our partners, and they would give us suggestions on characters or things that they thought were off. We had the whole number, We Know the Way, you know, we're celebrating the voyaging past. And I think it was Ian Gooding's idea, because it was a past voyage from thousands of years ago. He really wanted everybody to be costumed differently. And they had face paint more like New Guinea. New Guineans have face paint, body paint, and then their outfits had a lot of ornamentation that was based on sort of New Guinea. We showed that to our Samoan advisor, and she was like, no, that's all wrong. And so basically, and we already started finishing some of those shots. Whoa. And she said, it's like you've got them, these are like working people. They're on a boat, they're working, and you've got them like dressed up in their Sunday best. They wouldn't be wearing that ornamentation. They're sailing a boat, they're trying to keep the sails above. And she said, that just is wrong. So we went back and we took all that off the characters, and had to fix it, but we really wanted to get it right. So
I was thinking about how, like, we've done so many movies about, like, even inanimate objects, like, having feelings, but we haven't really gone into, like, different cultures and modern day cultures in animation. And so I'd love to see more films like this that are set in different parts of the world and show, like, different mouth shapes, you know, featuring different types of faces, because, like, come on, we just need that variety in animation.
So Kpop Demon Hunters is the latest example of how modern animation is really shifting. It seems like the animators are really focusing on getting the characters right. An audience really notices it, even if they don't always realize it. I'm definitely gonna go rewatch these movies to catch all those tiny details, and I hope you do too. In the comments below, let me know if there's any small animation detail in a movie that totally changed how you saw it. And if you wanna see more behind the scenes animation stories, check out this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.